The spaceport was loud, full of ships landing and leaving, full of strange voices and busy travelers. But Ray, a human traveler, was not in a hurry. He stood near a stall, eating something warm, watching people pass by when he felt a small tug. On his coat, he looked down and saw her, a small alien girl, no older than 7. With green skin and big purple eyes, her clothes were torn, her hair was messy, but her eyes were clear and serious. She spoke in a soft voice that almost disappeared. In the crowd, human. "My mother needs a husband," she said. Ray blinked, thinking he heard wrong. "What did you say?" "My mother cries every night since Dad left," the girl said again. "She needs someone, or she will die soon." Ray looked around, thinking maybe someone was playing a joke, but no one was laughing. No one even noticed the child. "Where's your mother now?" he asked carefully. "Come with me," she said, and grabbed his hand. Ray hesitated, but something in her eyes told him this wasn't a trick. So he followed her through the crowded station, past tall buildings and glowing signs, into the dusty outer parts of the city where no one wanted to live. They reached a broken fence and an old path that led into the rocks. Finally, they came to a small house, no, more like a shack, metal plates for walls, cloth for doors, wires hanging loose. It was quiet there, too quiet. The girl pulled back the cloth door and stepped inside. Ray followed slowly. Inside was dim, but warm. A woman stood near a pot of boiling water, stirring something. She turned around, and Ray saw her face. She was beautiful but tired. Her long silver hair was tied back, her skin pale blue, her eyes red, not from anger, but from many nights of crying. "This is him, Mama," the girl said. "He can help." The woman looked at Ray and quickly looked away. "I'm sorry," she said. "My daughter has a wild imagination." "She said you cry at night," Ray replied softly. "She said your husband left." The woman froze, then gave a weak smile. "Children talk too much. I'm not lying." The girl said, standing tall, "He left us when the black mark appeared on his chest. Then the shadows came, then he ran away. And Mama started crying every night." Ray sat down slowly on a crate. "What black mark?" The woman placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "That's enough, Leary. But he can help us." Leary whispered, "He's not like the others, Mama." Ray looked around the house. It was neat but nearly empty. One table, one bed, a few tools, and food cans. Nothing to show a man once lived there. "I'm sorry," the woman said again. "We don't need anything." Ray stood, nodded, and turned to leave. But something outside the house caught his eye. Strange marks, like deep scratches, on the rocks around the home, long and curved, almost like claws. He stared for a moment, then kept walking. But he couldn't forget the girl's voice, or her words. He came back the next day, this time with food and clean water. He knocked gently, and Leary opened the cloth door with a big smile. "I told you he'd come back," she said. Her mother looked surprised, but allowed him inside. She introduced herself as Ilaria. She accepted the supplies with quiet thanks but refused to talk about her husband or the past. Ray stayed for a while, fixing a broken lamp, helping set traps for small animals outside. All the while, Leary stayed close, drawing pictures in the dirt and singing old songs softly. "Why do you live so far from the city?" Ray asked. "It's safer here," Ilaria said, looking at the door. "Less noise, fewer questions." That night, Ray left again, but before he walked too far, he glanced back. In the fading light, he saw a symbol glowing faintly near the corner of the shack. The same one Leary had drawn in the dirt earlier without knowing. It wasn't a random drawing, it was a warning, or maybe a curse. Ray shivered and walked faster. He couldn't stop thinking about them. The girl who asked for a husband for her mother, and the mother who refused to speak. Something was not right. And Ray knew he was already part of it now, but he didn't know just how deep it would go, or what waited in the shadows watching them every night. Ray woke up early the next morning, but sleep still clung to his eyes like dust. He didn't dream last night, not the kind of dreams he wanted. He kept hearing the little alien girl's voice in his head, soft and honest. My mother cries every night since Dad left. He didn't plan to go back to their shack, but his feet took him there anyway. The city behind him faded into silence as the wind grew stronger out in the rocks. That lonely house stood in the same place, like it had always waited for someone to return. When he arrived, the cloth door was already open. Ilaria stood outside, hanging up clothes that had been washed in old water. She didn't look surprised to see him. She simply nodded and said, "You're early." "I brought something," Ray said, showing her a small energy heater and fresh cloth. "Figured it gets cold at night out here." She took it slowly, as if unsure if she should accept kindness again. Her eyes didn't meet his, but her hands trembled for a moment when she touched the heater. Leary came running from behind the shack with a big smile. "I knew you'd come back again," she said, jumping into Ray's arms. He laughed, a little unsure, but held her carefully. Inside the house, everything felt the same, but also different. There was a silence that didn't belong. The kind that waits, not the kind that rests. Ray helped fix some of the loose boards near the roof while Leary played with scrap pieces, making tiny creatures out of wires and stones. Ilaria watched him work but said little. Her eyes often drifted to the windows, to the hills, to something far away that Ray couldn't see. "What was your husband like?" Ray asked softly, not to cause harm, only to understand. Ilaria stopped stirring the small pot of food. Her hands froze, her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn around. "He was brave," she said after a long pause. "Braver than most." Ray waited for more, but she went quiet again. Only the soft sound of boiling water filled the room. Leary glanced up but didn't say anything either. She started humming instead, a strange tune that felt older than her age. Later, Ray asked Ilaria if she needed help fixing the fence. She agreed and handed him some old metal pieces and a tool. As they walked together outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in pink and gold. Ray tried again. "Did he leave on purpose?" he asked gently, "or did something take him?" Ilaria didn't answer right away. She looked at the mountains, then at the strange claw marks on the stones nearby. She spoke in a low voice. "Sometimes people go where we can't follow." Ray felt the air shift around them, colder somehow, heavier. He looked closer at the scratches in the rocks. They were deeper now, like they had grown since yesterday. That night, Ray didn't go back to the city. He set up a small corner in the shack where he could sleep near the door. Just in case. Ilaria didn't protest, but she didn't say thank you either. As darkness fell, the wind began to howl louder than before. The walls creaked, and the light from the small lamp flickered more than it should have. Leary curled up beside her mother on the bed, but she didn't sleep. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the door. Ray didn't sleep either. Sometime in the middle of the night, he heard whispering. It didn't sound like language. It sounded like something scraping against the edge of thought. Just out of reach, he sat up and looked toward the door. The cloth moved not like from wind, but like something had touched it from outside. He got up slowly and pulled it back. There was nothing there, but when he stepped outside, he saw it on the ground just beyond the doorway was the same glowing symbol as before. Only now it was larger, deeper, still warm. The lines pulsed gently, like a heartbeat beneath the soil. Ray turned quickly and went back inside, closing the door tight. His hands shook a little, but he didn't say anything. Neither did Ilaria. She was already sitting up, eyes locked on the ceiling, her arms wrapped tightly around her daughter. "They only come when I speak of him," she whispered without looking at him. "So I don't." Ray didn't ask anything more. He understood now, but deep down, he knew that silence was not going to be enough forever. Whatever had touched this family still lingered close, watching, waiting, and now it knew Ray was part of their story too. Ray walked through the crowded city streets, but it felt like no one could see him. His body was there, yes, but his thoughts were far away. still trapped in that lonely shack in the rocks, still hearing those strange whispers at night, still feeling the cold breath of something unseen brushing past him in the dark. He stopped in front of a small shop run by a retired alien pilot, a tough old man with metal arms and sharp yellow eyes. Ray asked him a simple question. Do you know? A woman named Ilaria who lives near the cliffs. The old pilot's eyes narrowed at once. Leave that ghost alone. Human, he muttered, then looked away, pretending to clean a broken pipe. She should have been taken long ago. Ray pressed for more, but the man shook his head. No. One helps her, no one speaks of her. You'll understand if you stay too long. Ray left the shop, more confused than before. He walked around for hours, asking quiet questions in back alleys and quiet corners. Each time he said her name, the reaction was the same: fear, silence, and people walking away quickly. He finally found a scrap dealer who once traded with Ilaria's husband. The dealer didn't speak much but said one thing that stuck in Ray's mind. He made a deal with the wrong kind. Now she carries the price. Back at the shack, Leary was drawing something on the dirt floor. Ray bent down and watched closely. She had drawn a mountain, a house, a family of 3, and something else, a shape with 3 eyes floating above them, black and wide like a storm. What is that? Ray asked gently. That's who came for Dad, Leary said with her childlike voice, not scared at all. And now they want Mama. Ray stood slowly, trying to stay calm. Who are they? Leary shrugged. They live in the places no one goes. They whisper and wait. They don't like broken promises. Ilaria stood in the corner, her face pale as she watched the drawing. She didn't stop her daughter, but her fingers curled tight around the edge of the wall like she might break it. She said nothing, but her silence felt louder than any scream. Ray decided to look deeper. He searched the storage closet and found an old trunk hidden behind loose boards. Inside were uniforms, medals, and a set of worn-out maps with symbols circled in red. There were notes written in a language he didn't know, but one phrase was repeated again and again. They always come in 3s. That night Ray didn't sleep. He sat outside near the fence, keeping watch while the wind rattled old metal and dry leaves. Just before dawn, he saw them, 3 shadows standing far off, between the rocks. They didn't move, didn't speak. They just stood there, watching the house like statues. The morning light touched the land, and the shadows disappeared like smoke. Ray ran to the spot, but there were no footprints. Only the same symbol burned into the ground. He returned to the shack with dust on his boots and fire in his heart. You need to tell me everything, he said to Ilaria. I'm not leaving you like this. Ilaria looked tired, her eyes hollow. Her lips moved slowly. I begged him not to do it. He said it would give us power, protection, a better life. She sat down, folding her hands, but the price wasn't his to pay. It was mine and hers. She looked at Leary. When he vanished, they didn't stop coming. They want what he owed them. And if they don't get it, they'll take something worse. Ray felt the weight of it settle on his chest like a stone. What do they want now? Ilaria stared at the floor. A life, a replacement. Ray realized what it meant, and his voice dropped. They want your daughter. She nodded. Just once. Not crying, just breaking on the inside. Ray's jaw clenched, his hands shaking. Then, they'll have to go through me first. That night, Leary said she had a dream. She saw her father standing in a room of mirrors, lost and bleeding, reaching out but never finding the door. She said he tried to speak, but shadows poured out of his mouth instead of words. Ray sat beside her, listening, holding her small hand in his. You're safe now, he whispered. I promise. Outside the shack, the wind stopped. The night was too quiet. And somewhere in the hills, 3 eyes opened again. Asterisk. The rain came without warning. Not from clouds, but from silence. The sky was clear. Yet water dripped slowly from the roof like the house itself had started crying. Ray sat near the window, staring outside, trying to understand what had changed. But everything felt wrong inside the house. Time moved differently now. Every second stretched. Every noise echoed too long. Leary hadn't spoken since last night. Not even when Ray made her favorite drink from the pack he brought. Ilaria stayed in the far corner, eyes closed, lips moving in a silent chant. Ray didn't know how long he had been awake, but he knew he couldn't sleep, not anymore. The scratches on the outer walls had gotten deeper, as if something had tested the strength of the wood while they slept, and planned to return. He took a lamp and walked around the shack slowly, checking the cracks, the hinges, the gaps beneath. The floor. He stopped near the bed and noticed something strange. The boards beneath were wet not from the rain, but from inside. A small puddle forming under the bed with no leak above. He pulled the bed slightly, and the wood creaked like it hadn't been moved in years. What he found made him freeze. A hidden panel, carved perfectly, almost invisible. He opened it slowly. And inside was a small metal box with a cloth wrapped around something delicate. He unwrapped it, a photo. It showed Ilaria, younger, smiling, beside a tall alien man with a strong jaw and proud eyes. Leary was just a baby in his arms. But what stood behind them was not normal, a shape blurred and black, like it didn't belong in the picture at all. And on the man's chest was a faint glowing symbol, the same cursed mark Ray had seen outside. Ray took the photo and returned to Ilaria. She opened her eyes and saw it, and for a second, her face looked like stone. Then it cracked, he promised. "Me," she whispered. "He said it was only for power, just a mark, just a deal." "What did he give them?" Ray asked softly. "My name," she replied, "and my daughter's bloodline." Ray's heart sank. "You mean they think they own her?" "They do," Ilaria said, her voice hollow. "Unless someone stronger takes her place." The lamp flickered, and the air grew cold again. Leary began shivering, even though the heater was still running. She opened her mouth and whispered, "They're coming tonight." Ray stood up and grabbed his pack. "Then let them come," he said. "I'm done watching. It's time to fight." He stepped outside, the night colder than before. Too quiet, even the insects had stopped singing. He walked the border of the land, drawing lines with chalk, leaving tiny charges from his tool. Kit. He didn't know if they'd work against spirits, but it felt better than doing nothing. In the distance, he saw the rocks move. Not roll or fall but shift, like something huge was crawling beneath them. 3 figures rose from the shadows. Tall, silent, wrong. They didn't walk, they floated, heads tilting slowly, watching him without eyes. Ray stood his ground, gripping the old shock blade he had recharged earlier. "She's under my protection now," he said out loud. "You want someone, take me instead." The 3 shadows paused. Then one of them spoke without moving its mouth. "You are not of the blood." "She is," Ray said, stepping forward. "But I belong to her now. Her family is mine." The shadows tilted again. As if thinking, inside the house, Leary cried out suddenly, not in pain, but in fear. Ray turned back and ran inside. Ilaria held Leary tightly. But her eyes glowed with panic. "She's slipping away," she cried. "They're pulling her soul piece by piece." Ray knelt beside them and grabbed Leary's hand. "Stay here, stay with me. You're safe. You're not going anywhere." He closed his eyes, focusing on her warmth, on her breath, on the pulse of her tiny fingers in his hand. Then he felt it, something trying to pull her spirit away, like invisible hooks tugging at her heart. Ray shouted through gritted teeth, "I won't let you take her." A loud crack hit the roof, and the lamp exploded, filling the room with sparks. The shadows had entered, not through the door, but through the very walls. Ray stood, his arm shielding Leary and Ilaria. "Then I'll die before you touch them," he roared. The shadows hissed, and for a brief moment, they stopped moving. A faint glow began forming on Ray's chest. He looked down and saw it. The same mark from the photo, Ilaria. Gasped. "He passed it to you." Ray stumbled back. "What?" "You accepted her as yours," Ilaria said with wide eyes. "Now the bond is yours too, that mark. It means you can face them, and maybe, just maybe, end this. The shadows hovered in silence. Sensing the change, Ray stood tall, one arm glowing, one hand holding the shock blade. He wasn't just a traveler anymore. He was her shield now, and whatever came next, he would face it with everything he had, even if it meant becoming part of the curse himself. Ray didn't sleep after that night, not even for a second. The mark on his chest still burned like hot metal, even though there was no wound, just glowing lines that pulsed slowly with every beat of his heart. He stood outside as the sun tried to rise, but the sky looked sick, gray, and dull, like it too had been cursed. Leary stayed inside, wrapped in a thick blanket, her small body trembling even in her dreams. Ilaria barely spoke, her eyes never leaving the floor. Every time Ray asked if she was okay, she only nodded, but the nod felt empty, like something had already been taken from her. Ray knew they couldn't keep hiding. He needed answers, real ones. He needed to know who these things were, why they kept coming, and most of all how to end it. He walked to the edge of the cliff, where the old fence had broken down. From there, the entire valley could be seen, dry and empty, but on the far side, almost hidden in the shadows of the cliffs, stood an old ruined tower, something no one had ever spoken of. Not even Ilaria. The mark on Ray's chest pulsed stronger when he looked at it, like it wanted him to go there, like something was waiting. He returned to the shack and told Ilaria he was leaving for a few hours. "There's a place out there," he said, "and I think it's connected to all this." Ilaria grabbed his arm, her eyes wide for the first time. "No one who goes near that place comes back the same." Ray gently pulled his arm free. "Then, I'll come back different, but I'll come back." He took a scanner, some rope, his shock blade, and a small communicator, just in case. The path to the tower was long, filled with sharp rocks and strange winds. The closer he got, the more silent the world became. Even the wind seemed afraid to speak near that place. When he finally reached it, the tower stood like a broken tooth against the sky, its top shattered, walls covered in black moss. There were symbols etched into the stone, old and worn, but still glowing faintly, the same ones from the photo, from the ground, and now from his own chest. He stepped inside carefully, each step echoing into darkness. In the center of the room was something floating, an orb made of smoky glass. Inside it, a shadow curled like a sleeping creature. Ray reached toward it, but a voice filled the air. Not loud, but inside his mind. "You wear the mark ... You bear the choice." Ray didn't answer. The voice continued. "Give us the girl, and the pain ends. Give us the blood, and your soul remains whole." Ray clenched his fists. "She's just a child." "Precisely," the voice replied. "A clean vessel, untouched by lies, she was promised, and promises bind all things." Ray stepped back. "No, I won't give her to you." The orb pulsed, and black tendrils lashed out, striking his chest. He fell to the ground, gasping, images flooding his mind. Ilaria screaming, Leary being pulled into darkness, himself standing alone in an endless void. But something inside him refused to give up. He grabbed the orb with both hands, ignoring the burning pain. "If a promise made this," he shouted, "then I'll make a new one." The orb cracked, light pouring from it. The tower shook, stones falling around him. But Ray didn't move. He spoke again, louder. "She's mine now, she's my family. You touch her again, and I'll destroy every piece of you." The shadow inside the orb screamed, not in fear, but in rage. Then the light exploded, and everything went black. When Ray opened his eyes, he was lying in the dirt outside the tower. The sky above was clear, but the mark on his chest had changed. It no longer glowed red, but silver, and instead of pain, it hummed with strange warmth. He returned to the shack just as the sun reached its peak. Ilaria ran to him, holding him tightly. "I thought they took you," she said, tears falling for the first time since Ray had known her. "They tried," he whispered, "but I made a deal of my own." Inside, Leary was awake again, her eyes calm, Her skin no longer cold, she smiled and ran to Ray, hugging his waist. "I dreamed of you," she said. "You were holding a ball of stars." And it exploded. Ray laughed softly, lifting her in his arms. "I guess I did, that night." They slept without fear. No whispers, no shadows, just the wind moving softly through the dry hills. But far beyond the cliffs, something watched the stars in silence, and for the first time in years, it blinked. Leary laughed again for the first time in days. A small sound like wind chimes in sunlight. She ran around the shack, chasing little spark bugs that had come out after the rain. Ray watched her quietly, one hand resting near the mark on his chest, which now pulsed like a heartbeat, not in pain, but like a silent promise. Ilaria stood at the doorway, her arms crossed, but her face softer now. "She's sleeping through the nights again," she said. "You've done more than I ever thought possible." Ray gave her a tired smile. "I haven't done enough yet." A strange peace had settled over their small home, the kind that felt borrowed, as if something big had simply taken a breath before returning stronger. Ray had been in battles, he had survived broken moons and machine riots. But this silence felt more dangerous than gunfire. He noticed it first when the animals disappeared. The traps were empty for 3 days straight, not even a footprint in the dirt. The nearby birds that used to circle the hills were gone. 2. Then came the smell, faint, but sharp like burnt air mixed with rust, one evening. While Ray was checking the fence, Leary came running with her eyes wide and scared. "Mama says someone is near the rocks," she said, but I looked and saw nothing. Ray hurried back and found Ilaria holding a glowing shard, a warning crystal. Its light flickered red, a sign that someone or something was close. "They don't want her," Ilaria said suddenly. "Not anymore," Ray frowned. "What do they want?" She looked at him, her voice trembling. That night, the stars disappeared again, swallowed by a thick gray mist that rolled down the cliffs like it had life in it. Ray stood outside, holding his shock blade and an old rifle, his eyes scanning the hills. He saw them just past the ridge. 3 tall figures, cloaked in smoke, floating inches above the ground. But they weren't alone this time. Behind them came something else, a creature too big for the world it walked on. Part shadow, part machine, part bone, its face was covered. But its eyes, dozens of them, glowed bright blue, watching everything at once. It stepped without sound, but the ground cracked with every move it made. Ray whispered, "What is that?" Ilaria came beside him. "The collector. It only comes when the debt is overdue." Ray aimed his weapon, but she grabbed his arm. "No gun can hurt that thing, only choice can." Inside the house, Leary screamed. Ray ran in and saw her floating. Again, her eyes rolled back, the mark he once carried, now glowing bright on her forehead. "They want to take her again," Ilaria cried. "You were only a delay, not a solution." Ray knelt beside the child and placed his hand on her chest. "Then take me instead," he whispered. "Take all of me. Just leave her." The wind roared like 1,000 voices at once. The walls shook, lights burst, the roof cracked, then it all stopped. Ray stood alone in the middle of an empty field. The sky was black, stars spinning above him like torn galaxies. And across from him stood the collector, its many eyes blinking. "Slowly, curiously, you claim the weight," it said, not with a mouth, but with sound that came from every direction. "You offer your soul in place of hers." Ray stood tall. "Yes, I'm hers, and she's mine. That's all that matters." The collector opened one hand. Inside was a tiny version of Leary, made of light, spinning in pain, crying. Ray stepped forward, arms open. "Give her to me." The collector tilted its head. "If you take her pain, you will carry it forever." "I'll carry all of it," Ray said. "Just give her back her peace." The figure stared, then slowly faded. The light child flew into Ray's chest, and his mark burned once again, this time deeper, cutting through skin and memory. He woke up screaming. In the shack, Ilaria holding his face. "You came back," she said. "I thought I lost you." Ray gasped for air. blood dripping from his mouth, but he nodded. She's free now. Leary slept nearby, calm and still, not floating, not glowing, just a normal child for the first time in a long time. But Ray could feel it. The pain was now his. The shadows had taken part of his spirit, and he would never feel whole again. But the house was quiet, and the night, for once, passed without any whispers. Ray didn't hear the morning birds anymore, not because they were gone, but because something inside him had changed. The sounds around him felt far away, like they had to travel through water before reaching his ears. He sat outside the shack, staring at the sky that finally looked clean again. The mark on his chest no longer glowed, but it hadn't disappeared. It remained there like a scar made of light. A quiet reminder that he had bargained with something ancient and walked away breathing. Inside the house, Leary laughed with Ilaria as they prepared breakfast. Simple food, but filled with warmth. Ray could hear the clinking of old metal dishes, the bubbling of stew, and the soft rhythm of mother and daughter moving together without fear. It was the first time in weeks that Ray didn't feel a shadow over them. Ilaria stepped outside and handed him a cup of warm tea. She sat beside him and looked at the hills. "She sleeps now without crying," she said softly. "That's all I ever wanted." Ray smiled weakly. "Then it was worth it." She noticed the way his hands trembled, the way he blinked too often, like his body was still somewhere else. "You still see them, don't you?" she asked. Ray nodded. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the collector's eyes looking back." Ilaria reached for his hand, and for the first time she didn't pull away. She held it tight, warm and real. "You don't have to carry it alone," she said. "Not anymore." Later that day, they walked into the city, hand in hand with Leary in the middle. The people stared, not with fear this time, but with surprise. The woman no one dared to speak to had returned, and she wasn't alone. Ray stood in the central square and faced the crowd. "She's free," he said. "The curse is broken. The collector is gone." Many didn't believe him, but some did, especially those who had lost loved ones to silence and shadow. Word spread quickly that the human had faced the darkness and survived, not with weapons, but with love, with family, with sacrifice. Leary was given food, clothes, and new books to read. She ran through the market, giggling, playing, no longer watching the skies or jumping at every noise. Her laughter became a sound the city had long forgotten. One night, weeks later, Ray sat on the hill overlooking the shack, stars twinkling above like tiny memories. Ilaria joined him, sitting quietly for a long time before speaking. "You know," she said, "in my people's tradition, when a man gives everything to protect a bloodline, he becomes part of it, not by law, not by name, but by soul." Ray looked at her. "What does that mean for us?" "It means," she said with a gentle smile, "if you choose it, you're not a guest anymore." Ray looked down at the house where Leary's tiny figure danced with glowing bugs in the dark, then back at Ilaria. "I chose it the day she asked me to help you." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, there were no whispers in the wind, no glowing marks on the rocks, no eyes watching from the hills. The darkness had taken its toll, but it hadn't won. In the distance, deep under the ground where the collector once slept, something stirred again, faint and curious. But it paused, confused, because the girl was no longer alone. The mother was no longer afraid, and the man who had no reason to stay had become their shield, their warmth, their family. Back at the shack, Leary looked up at the stars and whispered to herself, "Thank you for choosing us." And far beyond the stars, where even light takes years to reach, something ancient finally closed its eyes, not in anger, but in silence, because even the oldest curse cannot stand against love willingly chosen. And in a broken world filled with shadows, a human had given a mother hope again.